Good afternoon, Mario.
Hi, Mary Beth.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. Seems like a while since I've seen you.
Has been a while.
Okay, well, we have our vice chairman here. So, Mr. Hogan, would you like to call this meeting to order?
You know what? I should print out my agenda if I'm running the meeting. Hang on, here it is. So I would, do we use a pledge of allegiance here or?
Yeah, you'd call the meeting to order and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, just like Planning Commission, I got it.
Yeah, and then on to Carol for roll call, and then back to me.
Okie dokie. How come it says launch meeting? Because I went to another screen?
Oh, I
Oh, here
don't
we
know.
go. We are all, okay, no. I don't understand.
And we can't see what you're seeing.
I don't want to leave the meeting.
Please don't leave the meeting.
I apologize here. I think that I'm going to leave the meeting and relaunch. How about that, Mary?
Okay.
All right, sorry.
We'll be here for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Technology is our best friend.
There's Evan. Good.
Carry to me.
Hey, Mary, while we're waiting, do you have any idea what's going on at the fruit stand property?
No.
They've got heavy equipment out there grading and stuff. So I'm just curious if what's going on, if anybody knows.
And the one on Taylor?
Yeah, Pastel.
Yeah, Pastel Oro. Actually, yes. That is part of a PG&E gas line project thing. They have an easement from that property owner to, there's a main line that runs down Loomis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're
valve lock they're putting in.
Valve. Thank you. I was
It's like a lot
say
of work.
Carol knows about this. Yes.
So it's not high density apartments?
No. Darn it.
Not yet, anyways.
Evan, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you. I apologize. I was a little nervous.
That's okay. We're just trying to get underway here. Bear with us while our vice chairman enters the meeting. Here he comes.
Okay, apologize for that. I was in a panic over here. Let us call the meeting to order by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance
pledge allegiance
to the
flag
flag of the
of the
United
United States of America
to the
and
republic
the republic for which
which
it stands,
one nation.
one nation,
Under
under
God.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, my sound is not right. Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not hearing you guys correctly. There's a time differential, but let us proceed with roll call.
Okay, well, I do not see our chairman online. Vice Chair Mike Hogan,
Here,
Russ Kelly,
Here.
Ed Horton. And I know Thor Ludi is out. Hector Lewinsky,
Yeah.
Tim Onderko,
Here.
and auxiliary member Matt Fox,
Here.
and auxiliary member Evan McKenzie.
Here.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. I never did get my agenda printed because of the problems I was having. I believe now we're going to do the consent agenda, Mary?
Right now, we're going to open it up for committee comment for items not on this agenda. So
Thank
any committee members, if you have something that's not on this agenda, speak now. Raise your hand. Seeing none. Now it's time for public comment for items not on the agenda. So any members of our public that are attending this meeting that are not committee members, if you have any comments or questions off agenda, now is the time to raise your hand. Seeing none.
Okay, I've got an old agenda here, Mary. I'll just follow that.
Okay,
So now it's time for adoption of today's agenda,
perfect.
and we have a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Second? I'll second the motion. All those in favor, just raise your hand and say aye. Aye,
We have
Aye.
to do roll call votes. I'm sorry.
we do.
Yeah,
Okey doke.
our,
Yeah, for
our,
virtual meetings we do.
our town attorney requires it.
Okay,
So if we could
Mike
have
Hogan?
roll call, please, Carol.
yes, Mike Hogan,
Here, late, but here.
No, that would be an A or an
Aye.
A.
Yay.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, Russ Kelly,
Here.
Hector Walensky,
Aye.
and Tim Underko.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, so moving on, I guess we go straight to the public hearing portion where we're going to have our presentation, Mary.
or else maybe we'll do public comment on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any, do we have any public? I saw the item, but I didn't think we were doing that for this committee. So is there public comment regarding the consent agenda?
Consent agenda. If so, raise your hand. Seeing none.
Do we have to do a roll call vote on the consent agenda?
Yeah, it needs to be a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
Okay, can I have a motion, please, from someone on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Russ. A second? I'll second that motion then.
Thank you.
As acting chairman, I don't like to make motions or do seconds unless necessary, but we do want to keep things moving. I've already held us up. So then moved and seconded, roll call vote, Carol?
Yes, Mike Hogan,
Here, yes, I.
Russ Kelly,
Aye.
Hector Walensky,
I learning.
and Tim Underko.
I.
Okay,
With that, now we can move to the body of our meeting, which is going to be a presentation from, is it going to be from Mario?
No, this presentation is being sponsored by the Local Government Commission, LGC, in partnership with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, SACOG.
So I'm guessing that's the unfamiliar face, Kayla McDonald.
McDonald. And I would like to take then Greg Chu just popped in. Greg Chu is a SACOG. Kayla McDonald, LGC, and she is the project manager for LGC's community design team. And I lost Paul, but Paul will be your presenter today. But take it away, Kayla.
All right. Thank you for introducing us. Again, I'm the manager on this project on behalf of LGC, Kayla McDonald. I'm also joined today by Deanna Gonzalez, who will be collecting your feedback and taking notes. And then we also have Josh Meyer, who's incognito, but he's listening in and joining us today. And just want to introduce Paul Zaikovsky, like Mary Beth said, will be the presenter today and leading some of the activities we have. So Paul Zaikovsky directed our community design team from 1995 until 2019. And now he's serving as a part-time specialist. And so he's worked with over 250 communities, working on projects similar, or doing presentations similar, of course, to what you'll see today, looking at infill development, walking, bicycling, transit. And he's led over 100 charrettes, which are usually multi-day community engagement events. So you'll learn a little bit more about all of this, and you'll get to touch on some of his experience during the presentation today. And the presentation will be followed also by, like I mentioned, an activity where we will actually look at some maps and get some feedback in the streetscape for the town of Loomis. So go ahead, Paul, take it away. Once you're ready.
There we go. Okay. I'm going to basically block my view so you can, where is it? Stop my video. Okay. Okay, can everybody see the screen that has the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. What we want to do is actually get some feedback from you, but before we do that, I'd like to run through a presentation. It's really about how do we create safer and more complete streets in small towns and in our communities. So I'll do that, and then during the presentation, there will be a few polls, so just be on the alert for that. There's, I think, 10 polls. Make sure everybody's staying awake while I'm speaking. And then after the presentation, we're going to do several things. One is just a series of questions that we'll do as a group. And then we'll actually also do a mapping exercise where we'll be able to mark things on a map of Loomis. So we get feedback from you on some of the issues that you think could be addressed or should be addressed as you move forward with your general plan. So let me, okay. So one of the things I often like to start out reminding everybody is why we live in towns and cities. Human beings are social beings. We depend on one another for, and it's a way to, living in towns and cities allows us to maximize the exchange of goods, culture, friendship, knowledge, etc., and to minimize travel. We want to be able to have the opportunity to do all these things without having to travel long distances for each of them. So we live in towns to maximize that exchange and to minimize the amount of time we spend on travel. Oh, I'm going to have to use my mouse here. Sorry, a little technical glitch here. Okay. And yet we built a lot of our communities so that really it's not that easy to do that. And this is a quote from an elected official. He was actually the former mayor of Oklahoma City, who after he became mayor said he realized that Oklahoma City had created a really great city if you were a car, but not particularly good for people who were walking on bike, taking transit. So, and then we have a lot of communities where we've built things without giving much thought to how we support people who are not in cars. So here's an example of the layout of of several shopping centers where basically the parking tends to dominate. This could be an image from pretty much anywhere in the country. And what we'd like to try to do through good planning is really rearrange where those things go so that where the buildings go and where the parking goes, so that by the design of that community, we make it more walkable and a more pleasant place to spend time. So we don't lose any of the land uses. We still have the shopping centers and we have the retail and offices, but we also can add in a street front that people that really provides a sense of place where people want to spend some time. And I often remind people that even though we travel on roads like this one, they're not really places where we'd like to spend a lot of time. I think we'd all agree that we'd much prefer to hang out, say, on a main street that looks like this. The interesting thing is if you look at national surveys, this is one done by the National Association of Realtors, and they've done it for quite a few years now. And what they find is that you can go back to 2015, I think they did even earlier, that one of the most desirable things for people looking to buy a house is sidewalks and places to take walks. You can see that from the top there. Then we also know that it's interesting to see what's happened during the pandemic. July 2020, people were not as concerned with a short commute to work, but they still, easy access to the highway became less important as people were working from home. But, still people are, and also, of course, public transit fell off pretty significantly. But people still want to have, the walkability and bike lanes and paths nearby. So the first poll is going to be this one, and Mary Beth will put it up on the screen and we'll give you all a few seconds to vote. How far would you be willing to walk to get to a coffee shop or restaurant in Loomis? So just pick one of those and then we'll be able to pull up the screen, the results, and see how people voted on this.
And it looks like all of the questions are coming up simultaneously.
Yeah, I see that.
Mhm.
I copied and pasted. So if you could just do the first one,
Right.
that would be the important one.
Okay.
No peeking at the second.
Right.
Nobody's polling.
I wonder if the polling may have gotten messed up by the copy and pasting, Mary Beth. So you know what? Well,
It does not accept when I
Okay.
click submit, it's not submitting.
Right. Okay. Let's just
Okay.
do it. Let's just do it with a show of hands. So I guess if everybody can, I'm gonna stop sharing. So just look at these different distances. Basically, it's a 5 to 6 minute walk, 10 to 12, 15 to 18, or 20, 40 minutes. So I'll or maybe do it with a show of hands. Do you all have the oh, they can't raise their hands in this. I'm not sure if they can raise their hands. Okay, I'm going to stop share. And if we can just get people to show their video, how many of you would be comfortable walking? I'll start at the top, 2 miles, 40-minute walk to get to a restaurant or coffee shop. Not very many, I don't think. Okay. How about 1 mile, about a 20-minute walk? Do we have any walkers in the group, big walkers? How about 15 minutes? Okay, yeah, I think a lot of us would say 15 minutes reasonable. How about 10 minutes? And then 5, of course. And all of you who said 15, of course, are on that. Okay, great. Let me just go back. And everybody can see the screen good? Well, okay. Oh, does this? Okay. And basically, that's in line with what some national surveys show. This is actually from the Centers for Disease Control. They found that about 46% of people were willing to walk a mile to go to church or school. Less number, 35%, would walk a mile to work. So let's look at Loomis. If we take the intersection of Horseshoe Bar Road and Taylor Road and just draw a half-mile radius from there, 10 to 12-minute walk, you can see it encompasses, quite a bit of what's around that central part of the town. And in order not to, so you don't think I'm cheating, I know that this is as the crow flies, and of course streets don't all connect directly this way. So if you look at those two little stars that just appeared, those are if we actually map it out, as I did here on Google Maps, and you can actually see the way you would have to travel to get to those locations. So it's pretty close. That half-mile circle actually does give you, gets pretty close to the 10-minute walk. Maybe it's a little bit of an exaggeration. And of course, we do see pedestrians. When my colleague Josh and I were up there at different times a few weeks ago, we did see quite a few pedestrians in Loomis. What about bicycling? What if we also said 10-minute bicycling trip at about 10 miles per hour? How much of the town could we cover? And as you can see, that's about almost 2 miles. And again, in order to sort of make sure you don't think I'm cheating here, there's that star towards the bottom, you can see. So it's a little bit smaller than that circle. And of course, with bicycling, you also have to consider whether you're going uphill or downhill. So in one direction, you can see over here on the left, it's actually about, the time is about the same. There's a little bit of hills. It's about 10 to 11-minute ride in either direction. And if we go to a different location, this one's only half a mile away, or I'm sorry, 0.9 mile, about a mile. That's a 5-minute ride, so about half of that. So from I guess the center of town to DeLauro High School, you can see what the time is. And of course, we saw cyclists and skateboarders in Loomis as well. I think folks in the community want to be able to do that. Poll number 2, and this is, I guess we'll just have to ask people to tell us which type of, which describes your attitude about riding a bike. So is there anybody here that would consider themselves a strong and fearless cycle? If so, just unmute and tell us. Usually it's better with a poll because you can be anonymous. Now you're sort of on the spot. Or are you enthused and confident about riding a bike? Okay, I see a few of you signaling that. You're interested but concerned about riding a bike. So there's, we find that in a lot of communities, that's the larger percentage. And then there's about a third of folks that say, there's no way, no how I'm getting on a bike. I may have done that when I was a kid, but I'm not doing that again anymore. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about complete streets. And this is a concept that emerged about 12, 13 years ago, really to say that we want streets, which are the major public space in our towns and cities, to work for everyone, no matter who you are or how you travel, whether you're in a car, on a bike, or walking or taking transit. And it's a very simple concept that streets should be designed for people, not just cars. They should be friendly to cars, pedestrians, and cyclists. And we want streets to be safe, comfortable, and convenient, whether, again, you're on a bike, in a car, or on transit. And we want to make sure they're safe and convenient and comfortable, whether you're young, old, able, or disabled. And I should add that California actually has legislation that was passed, I think, about 6, 7 years ago that says that when we update our general plans, we need to consider this issue of complete streets. How do we make our streets more complete? Now I want to talk about safety issues and how do we make sure that streets are safe? And what's the most important thing in that is speed. And I'll talk about 3 reasons why speed matters. The first is simply that as you speed up on a street, the driver will focus, or you as the driver will focus less on your surroundings. So at 15 miles per hour, you'll see the buildings, you'll see the people walking along the street, you'll see the stores that are there. You'll actually get a good sense of what, for example, what a main street might have, what shops are on that street. But as you speed up, your field of vision narrows. So at 20 miles per hour, you're seeing less, 25 even less, 30 even less. Your basically your vision is narrowed down just to the roadway. The second issue we have to consider is that the faster you're going, obviously, physics of movement of the vehicle indicates that it's going to take much longer to stop your car. So at 20 miles per hour, you can see here, it takes a little over 100 feet to bring your car to a full stop between the time you react to the danger ahead and you slam on the brakes and the car can actually physically stop. but just double that speed to 40 miles per hour, and now it's 3 times the distance to stop. So that's another big concern, of course, with speed. And the third one is simply, as a pedestrian, if you're hit by a car at 20 miles per hour, your chances of survival are pretty good. 1 out of 10 will survive. But at 40 miles per hour, only 1 person will survive, and probably with some pretty serious injuries as a result of that higher speed. So I was going to ask you here to, with this poll, as you approach this town, what you see in front of you, what makes the drivers slow down? And why don't you just, if you want to unmute yourself and just say, is it, the speed limit sign that if you sort of move your, unfortunately, because of the way Zoom works, if you've got your image, the photos on the images on the right, you won't see that there's a speed limit sign on the right. There's a gateway sign down up ahead, right over there. There are sidewalks, there are trees, there are houses, there's people. Which of these do you think would make the motorist slow down? Anybody want to jump in?
It'd be narrowing the bike lane.
Okay, the narrowing of the shoulder narrows down to the bike lane. Okay, any others?
I'd say all of the above.
Yeah. I think what we find is that basically all these things, as a motorist, you see all this. The road seems tighter. You've got people out there. You've got trees, which also makes the road feel narrower. The bike lane, as you noted, does, or the shoulder narrows down because you've got a curve there. And basically, what we find is that curbs and the sidewalks often will slow traffic more than the speed sign. That is, unless there's a police officer, in their cruiser parked right, nearby. Most people will respond to what they see up ahead. And we often, in the work I've done on pedestrian safety, designing a pedestrian safety course I do for Federal Highway Administration, we emphasize that the correct design invites the correct use. Right design invites right use. So, and this is basically endorsed, and as we can see in the next image, by what the Federal Highway Administration tells us. Whoops, sorry. In some of their guidebooks, they basically say drivers read the road, not the design plans. So drivers, as they're driving along, will respond to the design, and the design is what we want to try to get it. We want to get it right so that it emphasizes the behavior we want the motorist to follow. So, for example, coming into a town, we want to be designing those streets or thinking how those streets should be designed to relate to the context. So out on the highway, you may be going 65, 70 miles per hour, but as you come into town, the way the road looks, the way it feels, what's around it, where the trees are, where the sidewalks are, where the curbs are, et cetera, should be giving the motorist that sense that now they're coming into a different environment. And there's different ways, in addition, that we do that. We also can do that with gateway signs, for example. One of the challenges that we've had in this country is that we've tended to oversize a lot of our streets. So I'll tell you a short, brief story here. The road on the bottom is a road in Stockton, on which my wife and I, with one of my nieces, were traveling at very slow speed. We had just turned onto the street that you see here, and we were hit by a vehicle coming in the opposite direction that was going probably 89, 90 miles per hour, lost control, spun into our lane. We were in the far right lane, and we ended up perpendicular up on the sidewalk with concussions, and fortunately not, all wearing seatbelts, not any additional major injuries, a lot of bruising and so on. And I had a cracked rib or two. But that's what happened on this oversized street. Now, if I just asked you, where would you prefer to walk? I think you'd all agree the street above would be a more comfortable place to walk. Which street is it safer to drive? Well, clearly the one on the bottom allows a motorist to pick up a lot of speed and lose control, much harder to do on that street above. But what's really interesting is that the volume of traffic that both of these streets carry is about the same. They're both carrying about 16,000 cars per day. And, again, we can move cars very efficiently with one lane of travel. We don't always need to add those extra lanes, which often just mean that cars are going to speed up and go faster. The other issue is just simply the width of traffic lanes. On our freeways, we size the traffic lanes for 70, 75 miles per hour at 12 feet widths. That's a standard traffic lane width. But the research has found in recent years that 10 and 11-foot lanes are just as safe as 12 feet when you have streets that have speeds below 45 miles per hour. We don't lose anything by dropping the speed, by dropping the lane widths down. And in fact, you actually get a bit of safety benefit because motorists will tend to feel a little bit more constrained and slow down a bit with those narrower lanes. So what we're seeing is, what we can do is actually, in this case, this is a Photoshopped image, but we can sometimes take that extra width out of the lane and, add other amenities to the street, like a bike lane or curb extensions, as we see here. And by the way, you don't lose capacity either. So the 10 and 11-foot lane is not going to reduce the ability to move vehicles. It's just going to bring the speeds down and give you a little bit of space for other things. And we've seen examples of communities around the region, around the country, that have recognized this. And this is one in Rancho Cordova, right near Highway 50, where the lanes you can go out there and measure them. They're 10 feet. And it gave them a little bit more space for that bike lane that's next to the curb. The other issue to think about is, particularly in towns like yours, where you still have sort of a rural environment, sometimes the edge of the road is not really well defined. So I'm going to show you some images, and these are, again, Photoshopped. It hasn't been, as far as I know, it hasn't been built this way yet, from a project we did in Ventura County in the town of Oakview, just with some ideas for how to establish more of that edge. So first of all, we got the bicyclists, but just even keeping that rural character. You don't even have to have a paved sidewalk or concrete sidewalk. There are treatments like these that sort of establish, where the road ends and where the pedestrians, can walk, or the walkway is. And actually, Caltrans has made use of some of these ideas in rural towns. So this is in the Capay Valley. As people come into the town of Capay, very small town, you have this pigmented asphalt. It's asphalt. It's not concrete. It's not bricks. They just colorized and stamped the asphalt to make it look like pavers, which again tells the motorist you're entering a different environment, slow down. The other issue to think about is how to create buffers to parking lots. So another example from that Ventura project, you can see the building across the street. Again, no edge to the parking. It's just right adjacent to where people are walking. And here with just a low wall and some landscaping, it really sort of, and the trees and some trees actually really improves the look of that business. And there's a lot of examples out there of buffers to parking lots. The upper two images show use of a wall and some landscaping. The bottom ones are just, landscaping that buffers the sidewalk from the parking. Gateways, as I mentioned, another way to sort of get the message across to motorists that you're entering a different environment. So some communities go big with the over the roadway signs like we see here. Others put in a monument sign in the middle of the street. You've got the monument sign on the side of the road, which is another technique that communities use. So just ways to signal to the motorist, hey, you're, slow down, you're entering another environment. And sometimes you can do that in a part of your town. So here in downtown Cloverdale, they put this treatment in just as you're entering the downtown. I'm going to talk about roundabouts. I know sometimes they can be controversial, but roundabouts can create great gateways, and they have other benefits because they reduce vehicle speeds and they can they help you move the traffic safely and smoothly. So while we're on this issue of gateways, I'll talk about roundabouts. So for folks who haven't experienced a roundabout, it's basically a yield intersection. The motorist approaches. As they approach, if there's no vehicle approaching them in the roundabout, they just continue through and they can make the right lane through, go straight through, make a left lane, or make a U-turn. Very easy to make U-turns. You'll notice there's different parts to it, to a modern roundabout, as we call them. You have that, first of all, as you approach, for pedestrians, it works very nicely because if that first of all, the motorist is already, their foot is on the brake. So most motorists will yield to pedestrians about to cross. But if that first motorist doesn't, the second one has to, because the crosswalk is located one car length back from the roundabout. And I've seen it with 2-lane roundabouts where actually you would think cars are going even faster, but even there you see it If the first car doesn't yield, the second one does to the pedestrians. Bicyclists can either take the lane, which is what a lot of them do, because the speeds are now bicycle speed. They're about 15 miles per hour. Or many times we design the roundabout with a ramp for exit. And I think you can see it, it's probably easier to see it up here, where the bicyclist could come out off the street if a young bicyclist who's not very confident, and just walk or slowly take their bike through the intersection. But typically bicyclists just take the lane and go through it. And then for trucks, people often say, well, how do large vehicles get through? That truck apron you see there is actually raised a few inches above the asphalt. So cars will not want to get on it. It's usually also a rougher surface, but a truck can make a left turn through the roundabout by just letting their rear wheels go over that section we call the truck apron. So why are roundabouts being built all over the country now? Because they move the traffic very efficiently. Here's an example from Asheville, North Carolina. As you can see here, this intersection in this direction that we're seeing has 6 lanes. Keep an eye on, I guess there's 2 buildings that will show up in the next after image. Here's this big one in the back and this one here. Now, if we go to the next image, they've gone from 6 lanes to 2. Why? Because we're moving traffic very efficiently through that intersection, and we no longer need all those lanes for right turns, left turns, and so on. And you have, I'd say, you've got now space to put in angled parking. If you notice before, before they didn't have as much parking in front of these businesses. So now by doing this, they've created this space up here that we can add the parking. They've been able to probably also, I think bike lanes were not there before, right? No bike lanes. Now you see there is a bike lane in both directions. So a lot of benefits that can come from a roundabout intersection. The other thing is on the safety side, the research has demonstrated time and time again that roundabouts are safer. First of all, you're slowing down as you approach the roundabout. So the chance, we talked about the speed issues already, so that's a plus. And secondly, there's a lot fewer conflicts in a roundabout than there are in a typical 4-way intersection. Here you can see the diagram that sort of highlights all those conflicts at a 4-way intersection. At a roundabout, you only have 8 vehicle to vehicle and 8 vehicle to pedestrian. That's a single lane roundabout. It gets more complicated with 2-lane roundabouts. And back in 2000 already, the Institute for Highway Safety was touting the safety benefits of roundabouts. So I'll throw this question at you. How many roundabouts do you estimate have been built in the US by this year, let's say, an approximate number? Anybody want to venture a guess?
Come on, folks, unmute.
I guess 15,000.
Okay.
I'd say 500, not very many.
Okay. So we got both ranges. Actually, sorry, the correct answer, and there isn't any one person that, there's, I think, one engineering firm that's sort of keeping a spreadsheet of roundabouts, and they estimate they're about 7,000. So we're not yet at the 15,000, but we're at the 7,000 range. And which city in the US do you think has the most roundabouts? So here you've got 6 cities to choose from: Modesto, Sioux City, Iowa, Seattle, Carmel, Indiana, Orlando, Florida, and Worcester, Mass. Anybody want to venture a guess on this one?
Orlando.
Orlando, okay. Any other guesses? This one's a hard one to guess. I'm guessing nobody's going to guess the right one. But
I'm going to say Worcester, Mass.
okay. Anybody else?
Modesto.
Yeah, Modesto has several, yeah. Okay, I'll tell you. Nobody ever figures this one out. Carmel, Indiana. They have 138 roundabouts. The mayor of Carmel, I think back 10, 15 years ago, discovered roundabouts and thought they were fantastic, loved them, and he has been building a lot of roundabouts. Modesto, actually in California, was one of the first cities to put in roundabouts. And I think at last count, they only have about 11 or 12. But they do have several 2-lane roundabouts right on 2 ends of a high school, which I've seen operate and actually work quite well. But we're seeing more cities now also put them in. Okay, the other thing, while I'm talking about circular intersections, I might as well talk about mini circles. These are not the same thing as a roundabout. These are simply a traffic calming device that you put in at an intersection, and you basically make it a yield intersection. So motorists from all directions as they approach slow down. And if there's no other car coming into the intersection, they go through it. Seattle has been a big fan of roundabouts. They put in over 1,000 of them. And when they studied them, they found that they saw a 77% reduction in crashes in Seattle. This study was done quite a few years ago. They also give you a chance to sort of beautify the street. As you see here, you can have neighbors who take care of this, the mini circle. This is one of the mini circles in Sacramento. Although in Sacramento, we haven't quite done it right because we still put stops in on the cross streets to really get the full effect of mini circles. The idea is that all the cars have to yield and therefore they all slow down as they go through. Okay, so I'll talk briefly about how to help pedestrians and how to help bicyclists on roads. So when it comes to pedestrians, street connectivity is really key. When we consider that most pedestrians walk at a speed no faster than about 3 miles per hour, if you don't create good connections between destinations, you really limit where people can walk. So here we have 2 neighborhoods, each a mile square. In one, we have a connected street network where a child, for example, who lives in this home can easily get out of their home and just get to school directly. It's a maybe 5-10 minute walk. But on the image on the right, because there isn't that connectivity, now we've taken that 5-10 minute walk and turned it into a 20-30 minute walk. It's now 2 miles or so. And then on the return travel, we have some other complications. The child, for some reason, stops short of getting home. Maybe they're too tired by then. They're visiting with friends. And we also have 3 things happening here, 3 left turns. And we all know that with left turns, you now have more conflicts because cars are cutting in front of one another. So that adds to the challenge. You also will notice that in this image, because we don't have a lot of streets connecting as we do over here, these streets on the edges of this neighborhood are now going to be bigger streets, multi-lane probably streets, arterial roadways. We still haven't figured out how these folks get in and out of their neighborhood. It looks like they helicopter in. We forgot to put in the connector, I guess, to the main street. But over here, because you have that connectivity, you have basically a variety of choices. If you're a driver, you don't have such big streets. You can disperse the traffic. They can take different routes. If one street's blocked, you can take other routes. And you also, obviously, from the point I started, you can reduce the distance people walk. So more people will be comfortable taking a walk rather than getting in their car. So, and we know that, trails also can provide great connectors and amenities. Sometimes we can't connect the streets. So sometimes we connect, if you have 2 cul-de-sacs back to back, we can have a trail connection through them that can work. And just in general, if there are opportunities for trails, let's figure out a way to build those out as part of the network for walking and bicycling, not necessarily for vehicle use, but for walking and bicycling. And there's a lot of great examples of trails alongside roads and highways. Davis, of course, has done a lot with that. On the right, you see an example from Alaska alongside a highway. They have a great trail system. And of course, on Taylor Road in Loomis, you also have that section that has basically it's a sidewalk, but it can be used, I would imagine, by either a walker or cyclist that starts it's just north of Shawn Way and heading south towards the major intersection on Sierra College Boulevard. So that, provides that kind of a space for people to comfortably walk or bike on a busy street where there isn't a sidewalk. So this is from your Trails Master Plan 2010. I don't know how much of this has been built out, but I really encourage you to look for opportunities as you're doing your new general plan to create and expand your trail connections. When it comes to sidewalks, we often don't think about the fact that sidewalks have to handle a lot of stuff and a lot of things. We have to have a place for all the stuff that goes on the street, in the furniture of the street, the trees, the hydrants, light posts, lamps, trash receptacles, benches, you name it. Then you have the area where people need to be able to walk comfortably without bumping into things. And then there's the area that's right next to the buildings, the frontage zone. So we want to think about, when we lay out any sidewalks, how do we accommodate all those uses? So one of the questions I was going to ask you, but I'll give you the answer because I'll keep it moving, was the minimum width for sidewalks really should be 5 feet. Americans with Disabilities Act allows for 4 feet, but we know that narrow sidewalks may be great for young couples in love. But when we have average sized folks, we really need a little bit more space. So, and especially here where you're walking next to a wall and right next to the curb, you probably want to have a foot on each side so that people can walk comfortably. 4 feet is just simply not enough space for 2 moms or dads with strollers to comfortably walk along that sidewalk. So you need at least 5 feet to do that. And that's in a suburban residential area. If you're in the downtown or Main Street, and if you have the space, ideally we'd like to have more space. But again, older towns don't always have that ability to make those sidewalks wider. We also want good buffers to moving cars. So here, for example, in the upper left, we see in a residential area, we have the landscape strip with some lawn and some trees. Over here, it's a little bit more commercial. We have, again, some of the furniture on the street that provides a buffer to moving cars. Down here, we have parked cars along that street. That creates a great buffer between the moving cars and the pedestrians on the sidewalk. And in this case, where there wasn't room to do that because there's a hill here, just having the bike lane actually moves the cars away from the sidewalk and makes it more comfortable for pedestrians. One of my colleagues years ago wrote up the 22 benefits of bike lanes, and only I think 3 or 4 were for the bicyclists. The others were for pedestrians, emergency responders, and others. So here's an example of that where the bike lane is really helping the pedestrians as well as the bicyclists. We also want to consider driveways. We don't want to build driveways that look like intersections because motorists will not yield to pedestrians properly. They'll cut them off. They'll go in and out fast. We want to build driveways that look like driveways like this one. And one of the things to consider is that when you have that furniture zone that I talked about a minute ago, that allows you to accommodate that ramp for the driveway without sloping the sidewalk. And when you start sloping the sidewalk, you often will violate the Americans with Disabilities Act, which doesn't allow you to slope it more than a very small amount. So you'll often see sidewalks that slope either very gently or some that just don't meet ADA because they're sloped too much. But with that furniture zone, we now have that space to accommodate that ramp for the driveway. In a more rural neighborhood, it's okay to build sidewalks like this without a curb and gutter. So this is a small town in Oregon, for example, where they just built the sidewalk over here and they just left an area of landscaping of lawn in between that and the road. This is something that, maybe there's some streets in Loomis where people may not want sidewalks, but something like this might work. Of course, we need to cross the street. There's always something good on the other side of the street. So we know we can increase the effectiveness of crosswalks with locating them properly. There's a lot of tools out there actually now to make crossings much safer and more visible. We start out with just the visibility of the crosswalk itself. If we don't have a stop or a signalized intersection, we want to make sure that that crosswalk is visible, not just to the pedestrian that's standing, about to cross, but also to the motorist in their vehicle. So having those high visibility crosswalks is really important. Another poll. Okay. So this one, let's see. Is it legal to cross the street at an intersection where there's no signal or stop sign, right? If the crosswalk is not marked. So we don't have any markings on the street. Do any of you think how many of you think it is legal to cross there? Yes?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, anybody think it's not? Okay, good. You all passed the driver's test. Vehicle code basically says a crosswalk doesn't have to be marked. It's basically the extension of a sidewalk at an intersection. So any location where 2 streets intersect, there is an implied crosswalk as that basically the walkway, the sidewalk, or if it's not a sidewalk, even if it's just a dirt trail, would continue across that street. The second question is it legal to cross the street in the middle of a block? Yes, no, and it depends. Anybody want to venture a guess on this one? A little more complicated.
It depends.
It depends, correctly. It depends. It is not legal, according to the California Vehicle Code, to cross mid-block if you're between two signalized or police-controlled intersections. But if you're between two, say one intersection is signalized and the next block is not, you may cross mid-block, but now the responsibility for yielding to motorists is on the pedestrian. So if you cross mid-block, you shouldn't expect, of course, cars hopefully would yield to you, let's say saw you crossing, but if you cross, the responsibility for yielding to the motorist is now on you if you're crossing mid-block. But it's perfectly legal to cross as long as you're not between two signalized or police-controlled intersections. That's the way the vehicle code says it. Okay, if we're going to put in any kind of marked crosswalk, it's really important to light it. We know that up to 50% of pedestrian crashes occur at night. And we've learned actually that it's better not to put the lighting for the crosswalk right above it, because then it just illuminates sort of the top of people's head, but actually in front of where they're going to cross, as you can see in the bottom image on the left, and also at an intersection on the right. Curb extensions, I think you've probably all seen curb extensions or bulb outs. To me, it's really one of those win-win solutions because we don't have cars parked at intersections, right? We don't have them parked where basically the crosswalk would be. So that space that we can give back to the sidewalk, and in this case to the pedestrian as well, and we can first of all shorten that crossing distance, in this case by 16 or so feet. So now the crossing, the time the pedestrian's out on the street is much less. If this were a signalized intersection, our signal timing for the motorists would be improved. So it's a win-win. It actually makes it better for the motorists. They don't have to sit there and wait as long for pedestrians to cross. And of course, it makes it a shorter crossing for the pedestrian. There are other advantages. You get better visibility because the pedestrian now is standing out where they can be seen and they can see the cars that are coming. It also slows cars a little bit in some cases because it sort of makes the streets feel less wide as they enter or exit it. And it gives you room for street furniture, benches, as long as the street furniture doesn't block visibility at the intersection. The other technique that we're finding is very helpful on especially, well, mainly on multi-lane streets or large arterial streets is the raised median or even just a median island. What it does is it breaks up that crossing into two steps. So the pedestrian only has to worry about traffic from one direction at a time. And there is research on this that has shown that pedestrian crashes are reduced by almost 40% when we have a raised median or median island on a street. And here's an example. Remember I talked earlier about right design, getting right use, inviting right use. Well, here's an example of how we're trying to get the pedestrian actually have the right use by angling that crosswalk through the median by forcing the pedestrian to look in the direction of oncoming traffic. You can see there's that slight shift there. And if you're a pedestrian walking there, your angle of vision would be shifted towards oncoming traffic and make you really take that look. So by design, we're getting proper use. There's a number of tools that are out there. This is one that emerged several years ago. It's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. This is replacing a lot of the in-pavement flashers that you may have seen. I think you've got some as well on Taylor Road in the downtown. And this is a supplementary way to warn people that somebody's about to cross. There's also another tool that's actually called a pedestrian activated hybrid beacon, where it actually does bring cars to a stop, but then lets them move forward if there's no pedestrians in there. I didn't put it in here, but it's called the Hawk. And then for bicyclists, let me run through those, what the research tells us. So this is getting back to that question I asked you earlier. We see from some of the surveys that have been done in different communities that there's about, really that 60% of bicyclists that are interested and concerned, that only about 8%, the ones on the left, the red and the orange, the strong and fearless, enthused and confident, that are really willing to ride in a standard, what we call a class 2 bicycle lane that's next to traffic, right? So in the recent years, we've been thinking about, okay, how do we make it more comfortable for that 60% who are interested and concerned to get out on their bikes again? And one of the things to consider is we want to have a network that actually gets people to destination. So it doesn't all have to be the same, a bike lane or a trail, but you can mix and match to create a network that gives people, the route that they need to use to get to where they want to go. One of the new techniques we've seen is actually when you have the space out on the street, you can just add a buffer to the bicycle lane. So here's an example from Folsom up in upper right, another one from the Bay Area, where they just added that little buffer that makes it more comfortable for the bicyclist. We also see examples here. The one on the bottom right is in Davis, and notice that there they have a buffer not only to the moving cars, but also to the parked cars, because one of the causes of bicycle crashes is the dooring crash, where somebody opens a door and a bicycle, right in the path of a bicyclist that's on, coming towards you. There's also a newer tool that was approved by Caltrans back in 2015. Other cities and parts of the country have adopted it, called a protected bikeway, class 4. And this is not a very good graphic of it. I'll show you some pictures. So here's an example of a protected, separated bikeway from Southern California. And what's funny about this photo is you'll notice the bicyclist suddenly is, he's being photographed and he says, oh my God, I don't have my helmet on. Where's his helmet? On his handlebars. It felt comfortable enough when he got on that bike and on that separated bikeway that he didn't even think twice about having to put on his helmet. This now provides a buffer, so you're not riding right next to cars. You have something like that near Del Oro High School in Loomis, right? You have a two-way protected bikeway on one side of the road. There's also other examples. So you'll notice in the top two photos in Long Beach, they actually shifted the parking out and put the bikeway the bikeway between the sidewalk and the parking. As one of my friends who's a bicyclist jokes, it's better to protect the bikes with the cars than to protect the cars with the bikes. The bikes don't do a good job of protecting the cars there. And then in the lower example, here's a two-way protected bikeway, separated bikeway, and here's again that one we just saw in Temple City. So this gets back to that issue we talked about earlier. Which of the following facilities would you be most willing to ride a bike? And I think, there are definitely some bicyclists who want to just ride, who are, the guys are often dressed in Lycra and they're in their, fast bikes and they want to go as fast as possible and they want to be in that vehicle traveling. They're comfortable being there or in the bike lane. But most bicyclists, most of us, I think, especially as you talk about younger bicyclists or older, really want to be in a place where they have more of a buffer to vehicles, either a buffer with a painted bike lane with a painted buffer, a bikeway that's separated, or a multi-use trail. And that's really, I think, what we're trying to address these days. And we're seeing a lot more interest in bicycling. This is an old survey from 2010. I don't have anything more recent. But this was looking at how millennials are approaching these issues. And there is a trend now among younger folks to want to walk and bike more and drive less. And we've seen that in the last, I'd say 10 years or so. Of course, if you're going to have nice neighborhoods, you often want to have streets that have trees. Streets need trees. A lot of benefits from trees, obviously, help you save energy by providing that shade, improve air quality, reduce CO2. Can reduce stormwater runoff, increase property values as well. There's studies that have shown that. And there's also, and this is actually from a document we published, I think over 10 years ago, where some experts at UC Davis actually looked at this and found the average annual net benefit per tree. And this was factored over 40 years and so on. They also looked at the cost associated. So it's not just, this is net benefit, not just the pluses. But it's subtracting out the maintenance issues. And it's still a pretty significant benefit that we get from trees. And something that wasn't anticipated is that if you have street trees providing shade over streets, it actually means that your streets last longer. You don't have to maintain them as much. So shade trees can reduce your street maintenance costs. And this was a study that they conducted in, I think, Modesto back in 2005. And they found that their highly shaded streets didn't need to get slurry seals as often as the unshaded street. The street asphalt doesn't dry out as much and it lasts a lot longer. So there's fiscal benefits as well from having good tree canopy. Finally, we want to talk about places to gather in our communities, especially in our town centers. This is an example of a section that was previously in the road that in Monterey, they decided, okay, we don't need that section of the road. Let's create this little plaza out here. It can be small spaces, large spaces, small little parks. Obviously, farmers markets are a great way to bring community members together. And now we're seeing something new, which is the parklet. I don't know if you've had any up in Loomis, but basically this is a case where when you don't have a lot of public space, sometimes you can take a parking space or two and create a place for, again, people to hang out, for people to park their bikes. These two examples are in San Francisco. This one is in Davis. And this one, I think the story I was told was that the owner of the building actually paid to have it installed. And this one's a permanent, not temporary, as you can see. Some of them can be permanent. The ones that are built in communities with harsh winter climates are typically only temporary, but California, we can make them permanent. And then you can see in this Davis example, there's also to the right here, we see also a bike corral where they can park a lot of the bikes from the students and so on that live and study there. This is a neat story in Modesto. A group of folks got together and did sort of a temporary installation of this parklet, and it looks like, you know, they put brick in, right? But in fact, this is just the first image where they put the planters out there to define the space, and then they basically did a simulated brick treatment to make it look like brick, and it was very effective, so effective that the city came back and actually built those out. So if you notice the subway across the street, there it is on the right here with now more formal parklet or curb extension there that the restaurants can use. You can also do these as temporary demonstrations. This is a little parklet that Kayla and I worked on for half a day in Salinas with just some of the stuff in the public works department yard and some things we brought along, and we created a place where people could hang out, the kids could play, and sort of demonstrated how these work. Public art is something also to consider, which I know Loomis has been doing a lot of different ways to do it. I always point to the city of Exeter down in Tulare County, where it's now become a tourist attraction. I think this was the first of their big murals telling the story and the history of the town of Exeter, telling the story of the orange packing plants down there. And by the way, those kids are not part of the mural. They're actually standing there. And now it's a tourist draw. This is, if you go to the Exeter webpage, they have a whole section on the murals and the history and the stories of them. And it attracts tourists to their community. And of course, in Loomis, you've got some really beautiful murals as well that highlight the history of your community as well. So just, I'd say, keep it up. It's one of those things that can really make people want to visit your town and come back. And think about other types of art. This is sort of utility art. There's a small town in Mendocino County where the school worked with some artists to create these benches with sort of tile on them. And then down in Visalia, they got very creative, and they have a program called Art on Fire, where they do a fundraiser for their arts program by having different painters get basically fundraise to get a chance to paint one of these fire hydrants. And of course, you want to make sure, as you're thinking about beautifying community, to have good wayfinding, letting especially visitors know where to find things. And you want to have signs like these that direct the motorists as they enter your town. But you also want to consider, some signs sometimes that can sort of point people who are walking or bicycling as to where things are as well. Let's see, we're running a little late, so I think I'll stop. Well, let me just show you these quickly. These are photo simulations, but they show how you can sort of, how a place can be transformed. So this is a small town of 3,300 up in Shasta County. We worked in over 10 years ago, I think, and just showing how some treatments over time with, adding some trees, getting some buildings in, stores can really transform that place. And I won't talk about the parking. Here's another example from Winters, Railroad Street. These actually were done by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments also some time back, and just showing how some of these transformations can take place over time. And finally, one in Live Oak, population 8,400, again, just adding curb extensions, a median, well-marked crosswalks, et cetera, can really sort of spruce up the place. And, again, you can define what kind of development you want to have happen along there. It doesn't, whether you want 2-story, 3-story, 1-story buildings, that's each community will decide that. So let me end there and let me show my, okay. And again, sorry about those polls not working properly, but I think you got the gist. Any questions or comments before we jump into the mapping exercise?
One of the things that happens around here is that when the bike lanes get a little wide, even narrow bike lanes, we get these folks from Sacramento who like to ride double. And they do it every chance they get. And it causes a problem with, especially with the narrow streets like Barton Road, on Brace Road, and even over on Laird. Laird is one of the best roads that they like to ride on when they come from Sacramento.
Okay, I guess we need to do some work with the Sacramento area bicycle advocates and get them to tell their cyclists when they go up to Loomis how to behave. Any other comments, questions? And by the way, I should point out that Davis actually marks their bike lanes. I think it's 7 or 8. I think they do 7-foot bike lanes, which is much bigger, bigger than most communities. Most communities do 5 feet. And that seems to work fine. But because they have a lot of bicycles in Davis, they've recognized they just have to go wider. But sometimes you don't have the space or the room to do that. So it's reasonable not to. Anything I said that that you think would work or not work in Loomis? I know, for example, even talking about roundabouts can sometimes be a challenge, but I figure it's good to put them out there because we are seeing a lot more built. Traffic engineers like them, transportation planners like them, and most communities after they're built, sometimes they'll not like them at first because they're new and we're not comfortable with them. But once they're built, most people do recognize that they work, and I've heard many a story like that over the years. So if we're ready, then we'll move on. Oh, sorry, Hector, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is room for little circles along Pacific and Taylor, but there's not much more room because those are the main arteries going through. Right. Little circles can help.
Yeah, I mean the roundabouts, the mini circles are really meant for more of a small streets and residential neighborhoods. The roundabouts are the ones you would use for larger streets with more traffic, that are carrying more vehicles.
Probably only in Sierra, but Sierra is coming now. The big box is coming, so that's all. That's gone. Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to point out, Paul ran this similar presentation to the Downtown Business Corridor Taylor Road Committee on April 25th. And so it actually showed downtown Loomis and kind of coming up to from Horseshoe Bar, turning right on Taylor, heading towards Del Oro. And we have coffee shops and stuff there. And the picture that he had showed the coffee shop and vehicles parked in the bicycle lane, right, and the competing sandwich board and all of that. So when you looked at that, and if you were a bicyclist going down that, you'd actually have to go out in the traffic lane to get around the parked cars. So there was a discussion about painting the curbs red and things like that. So, just awareness of where you're parking in whatever community you're in, so you're not obstructing those bike lanes.
Right. Yeah, I think that was, I forget it was not Horseshoe Bar, it was the next intersection up, just past that. And on 2 occasions, both myself and my colleague Josh, when we were there, photographed cars parked in the bike lane, basically, on the uphill side too, which means that the cyclists are going to have to pull out into traffic.
Yeah.
So not great. So if everybody's, Mike, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think resistance to roundabouts doesn't come from the younger generation. They've seen them, they're coming along with them. The older drivers at our public meetings anyway, it was mostly people in my generation that don't like the roundabouts. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, you know, people resist change. They need to get used to them. That's all.
Yeah.
You know.
And I've got, as I said, I've had many stories. I've worked all over the country. I had the one that I best remember was in Bismarck, North Dakota. Not a place known for, you know, doing really radical things, where they just they just built the first one in Fargo. And I was talking to a county supervisor who said, you know, I like roundabouts. I think they work great, but they just built one in Fargo, and my son was up in arms. He thought it was a disaster. It was going to be terrible. He hated the idea. And then a few months after it was in, he actually liked it. He said, yeah, they work. You know, you're right. They do work. So I think most people, once they've, you know, experienced them and recognize that it's a slow speed intersection, how it works, and that it's, you know, not the end of the world, sort of, you know, come on board.
I have a question. How much room do you need, a minimum room, to make a real roundabout, a circle?
Typically, for a full roundabout, if I recall correctly, from sort of diagonally across from, you know, building front to building front, it's about 110 feet.
Do we have that in Loomis?
At which location?
Any location.
You probably do on some of your, you know, if it's a bigger street.
Because if it's good, I agree with Mike. I don't like them, but if it's the next generation, they are the best way to direct traffic. Maybe you can help us identify where we can do it.
Sure. Yeah, it's something, you know, I think as our intersections are improved, as you look at treatments, talk to your traffic engineers and have them bring it in as an alternative. What Caltrans now does, what many state DOTs now do, is they have actually what's called a roundabouts first policy. They will have roundabouts first. They will actually have the designers see if a roundabout fits in to the intersection, and only if it doesn't will they go to another treatment like signalization. But instead of signalization, they will approach a roundabout first because of the safety benefits. So so it's, you know, I think it's something you can just ask your, you know, your traffic engineers, and you know, as an intersection is being revisited because of new development, to say, okay, what works best here?
Okay.
Yeah.
And Paul, sorry to put you on the spot, but you know, sometimes in some rural areas, you know, 2 travel lanes, maybe a third travel lane in the middle for left-hand turns, and then maybe some space on the side of the road sometimes even measures 80 or 90 feet that I've found. So
Right.
that sounds pretty similar to a roundabout.
Yeah, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna depend. I mean, you have to have enough space to fit them in, and sometimes it can be challenging because you have to buy right of way, so you can't always fit them in. But it's just a concept that I think people should become aware of, because as I said, we're going to be seeing more of them over time in this country and in the state. They are being built more, and it's helpful to understand how they work. Let's, if we don't have any more comments or questions, let's move on to sort of the meat of today's discussion, which was going to be getting your input. So I'm going to pull up another screen. If I can just find it here. Okay, I guess I got to go to desktop and then to, where did my map go? Sorry, this is. Oh, sorry. Uh-oh. Let me stop sharing so I don't embarrass myself fully by. There's Google Chrome. Okay, here it is. No, I don't want that one. Okay, Carol. Just bear with me. I'm pulling up the mural we're going to be using, which is in here. Okay. And now I can share my screen, hopefully. Okay, are folks seeing what looks like a map of Loomis up there? Do you all see the map now?
Yes.
The aerial photo? Okay. So before we jump into the map, we thought it'd be useful to just have a few questions that we ask you to respond to. There's 4 questions. We'll start out with what do you consider to be the heart of Loomis? And Kayla will write in and take notes down below. So any of you can jump in and give us your feedback.
Just unmute and talk.
Horseshoe Bar and Taylor Road intersection.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
second that.
Horseshoe and Taylor.
Okay. Any other locations? Is it a larger area than that, or is it just that
The
intersection?
other side, close to the post office.
Okay.
That whole street.
Okay.
From-
I'd say a block in any direction.
it's a
Okay.
block.
Any I guess differing opinions? Are there 2 hearts? Is there another location of Loomis that people feel strongly is the heart?
I'd have to say Rayleigh's because most local people end up going to Rayleigh's to do their shopping.
Okay. Yeah, that can be another place where people do gather. Shall we move on to streets? How about favorite street? What would you consider your favorite street?
It's a hard one. Our streets are pretty bad.
I don't see any.
I do like, and we did some traffic calming and pedestrian improvements on Taylor Road downtown.
Right.
I'm more of a guy who thinks, you build your roads for cars, but I think that came out nice. And I think
Okay.
it made the downtown look better.
Mhm.
And it's probably my favorite road in Loomis now, I think,
Okay.
other than my own driveway.
Right.
I think I kind of like the whole Taylor Road from Sierra College to up to past the high school.
Yeah.
We've actually put monuments that you didn't include in your slide in the center of the street. The Boy Scouts did them, and this made a significant difference.
Cool.
Really like Barton Road. I like the way it feels. I like the way it winds and the rural look of it and the white horse fencing and
Okay. Any other comments on favorite streets? Okay. So we move on to primary destinations. I guess the downtown may be one. Rayleigh's probably another big one.
Post
School.
office,
Post office,
schools.
Del Oro High School.
right?
It's a big one.
Mhm.
I find myself going downtown to go to the bank quite
Mhm.
often.
Mhm.
How about the hardware store?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, yes, definitely.
Yep. Is it both schools or just, I heard Del Oro High School. How about the elementary also?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Certain times of the day, but Del Oro's stuff going on Del Oro all the time.
Right.
I mean, pre-COVID anyways, we had football
Right.
games and
Yeah. Okay.
How about Swetzer Industrial Park?
Yep.
That's definitely a major car destination. Definitely.
Yep.
Evan.
Here. Okay. Okay. How about walkable destinations? Places you would either come to to a place, park and walk, or that maybe you would walk to from your home.
I think downtown's very walkable to park your car,
Mhm.
go to the hardware store, get a bite to eat somewhere downtown. There's a lot of restaurants there now.
Right.
There's a park and ride there, so you park there and then take care of your errands downtown.
Hmm.
And Rayleigh's is not even too far from there to walk
Right.
to.
Yep.
Basically, fruit shed to fruit shed is walkable.
Definitely. Right, Russ.
Right.
I'm sorry you didn't have a list on here for bicycling.
Well, we can add them. Give us your bicycle destination.
Now, we're getting a lot of brew pubs downtown that are walkable, Russ.
We are.
So any bicycle destinations?
I think they have some bicycling to the high school. I know that the Boy Scouts build a bike rack up there, especially for that. So and that's what the pathway is kind of for, to get people, to get them off the road to ride up Taylor Road to the high school.
Okay.
Also, they have skateboards go there, the battery powered skateboards. I see them every morning when I take my grandsons to school.
Cool.
We have several bicycle groups that meet up over at the depot, and then they use that as their start and their finish destination. And then they tend to do the gastropub or a place like that to eat when they're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something we often don't, or some communities don't often think about, is bicyclists often get very hungry and they eat. So they support your restaurants.
They also ride to a coffee spot.
Yes. That too. Okay, let's do a time check. Yeah, let's move on to the map. So, and of course we can keep adding to this, but what we want to do with the map is the aerial photo is just if there are specific locations where there are issues. So you'll notice down here we have sort of 8 different symbols for different issues: safety, bicycling, speeding, public transportation, traffic, trees, pedestrians, and just good examples. We already have the the bus stops, a little bus symbol on there. But if there are other locations where you think there's one of these issues to address, call it out, and we'll put it up there. We also, if you'd like, we can start out by just saying what's working, so we can sort of highlight what's working, and then Kayla can take some notes on the side, what's working, what to improve, how to improve it, and then any other comments. So we can take any kind of comments at this point from anybody. And we want to jump in. And of course, if we were in person, we could do this all together around the table, with the map, and it'd be a lot simpler than having to have us drop these symbols down.
I'd say one safety area would be King Road between Loomis Grammar and the south side of Delaware. There, it kind of goes over a hill, and it's real narrow, and it's a blind hill, and you got people walking and riding their bikes there. That's always scares me. Kind of right where it says King Road.
Okay.
That's the section. I would say also the Taylor Road from King Road, to Delaware, that same section.
Okay.
There's 2-way bike lane on one side of the road. Those are dangerous because cars are only looking in one direction as they pull out. It's got a lot of pedestrian traffic.
Okay.
I would like to see some improvements in that stretch if possible, actually.
Okay. And while you're saying that, Kayla is taking notes over on the side. So just.
And Boynton, where Boynton comes into King Road, that is a major disaster. I go there every morning, and you're not King Road at Interstate 80. Boynton is right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boynton and King Road is a problem, and also King Road, where I live, Los Flores, is also kind of dangerous because it goes uphill. Then we have the other traffic coming across the freeway and the overpass and the school. every time we had to turn, it's like you have to break your neck looking on your left to see if any car is coming, and it's very scary.
And Hector, where was that? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Wellington, I think Wellington pronounced Wellington,
Yeah.
where the parking lot for the school is. And
Okay.
King.
So coming down here.
Yeah, going down.
Okay.
Going down to King.
So
Okay.
right where your arrow is, and you see the Del Oro boundary there. Boynton goes right into the boundary of Del Oro High School there.
Okay.
Yeah, that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you had to turn right on King, it's very dangerous.
Okay. Well, that intersection there. Okay, great.
And King and Los Flores is a little hilly, and you cannot see what is in the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Horseshoe Bar Road, south of the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
from
this
the
section-
interchange to Horseshoe Bar and Horseshoe Bar stop signs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Horseshoe and what is that, Brace right there, or?
Is Horseshoe Bar ends up dead end, and the Horseshoe Bar goes both ways. It turns right to
Yeah.
Brace and Laird. So that
Are we talking down here, or are we still up in near the freeway?
keep go down to the bottom a little bit.
Okay.
Follow, yeah,
Yeah, right
there,
about there.
right
Okay.
there. That's Horseshoe Bar and Horseshoe Bar.
Okay.
And then this dog leg and Horseshoe Bar, which is in that section.
Uh-huh.
That's a terrible area, very narrow, limited sight distance,
Mhm.
lots of traffic.
Okay.
And lots of pedestrians and bike riders, all together.
Really? Oh, really? Okay. Pedestrians and bike.
Where
Okay.
was that again? Where it's narrow and there's a lot of bike and ped activity? I didn't get the street.
Just along Horseshoe Bar, kind of.
Mhm.
From the freeway to the intersection of Horseshoe Bar and Horseshoe Bar.
Right.
Yeah,
Got
Okay.
it.
that's a death ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Russ is right.
And I would say just the the off ramp from 80,
Yes.
Yeah.
traffic backs up onto the freeway, which is just
Yep.
it's just a matter of time before that's ends in a
So is it the off ramp in both directions, or
mainly
is
the eastbound.
so going east
Yeah,
Okay.
right there where your arrow is.
right
Yeah.
here?
That would be I think the town's looked at a traffic circle right there in the past. I don't know if that's still on the planning, but
Okay.
We have traffic circles in the current circulation plan.
Okay. Any locations that you think are working well? I guess we did talk about the downtown, so I guess that's one that folks feel it's working, that Taylor Road in the downtown works well.
I think
Any
the bike
other-
paths, there's a bike path that basically goes from King Road, kind of all the way to the north side of town along Taylor. That gets, there's people walking that bike path
All the time.
all the time, and that seems to work pretty well. It's separated from the main road in most places. It's old, kind of bumpy asphalt that not
So
the
is
greatest shape, but
This along the railroad or?
so
next to
kind of
it?
along I guess it'd be the east side of Taylor,
Right.
that intersection north along Taylor, past Del Oro, and all the way to the town limits on the north side of town.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I think that's, as far as walking and bike riding in town, that's probably
Mhm.
one of the heaviest traveled areas, and I think it works pretty well.
Mhm. Okay.
King Road also works pretty well from on the bike lanes along King Road, clear down by Sierra College, somewhere down there. It stops from past Barker, from Barker up to Rippey, up to actually Horseshoe
Humphrey.
Bar.
There's bike lanes, but they're separated bike lanes in that section
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
from Sierra College. I could be to Barker.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. What about let's look over here. Make sure Taylor got these locations correctly. If anybody wants to amend any of these, shout it out.
The
Okay.
park and ride downtown gets heavy usage.
Yes. That's
I
a
don't know
long-
that it's commuters all the time, but
Mhm. So that park and ride is all this area back here, am I right?
let's see. Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
It is LOS, Los Flores, no Las Flores, just
Ah.
in case.
Okay,
It's okay.
Los
Both works in Spanish, either way.
Flores.
Yeah,
It should be
LOS.
Las. It should be Las.
Las is when is the flower, and Los when is the family.
Ah, that's a family. Got it. Thank you. Anything else? Let's see. Let's just zoom out a little bit.
You know, another thing that might be worth mentioning is, I mean, Loomis Park, even though it's not in town, technically it's, you know, right on our border. I mean, that's our main regional park, and there's not really a good way to get there without driving in a car.
Where is that park?
Kind of right to your right,
In this area?
up a little bit,
King Road.
kind of just
King
south of
Road.
King Road and ONG Place, or
Oh, okay.
right there, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our main regional park in the area. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people go there to, you know, there's some walking trails, and there's, you know, baseball and soccer and youth sports going on there all the time. But you really kind of, it would be dangerous to ride your bike down that road to get there.
Right.
I agree.
So
Go ahead.
is that a county park, I imagine?
Yeah, it's a county park.
Okay.
Also, what to improve? We need to improve an alternate route around downtown, because at rush hour and school in and out, it's, you know, very low service level. I should say high level of service.
I propose something in writing about that, but it's have to be, it's big. It's to go another route straight from Sierra College all the way to Taylor Road, on the other side of the the tracks, the train. It's just 2 lanes, or 1 lane going, 2 cars lane going one direction, and Taylor become 2 lanes going the other direction. So that's the only way I see that is going to help traffic circulation.
Have you found the problem has that gotten better during the pandemic, or does it continue to be a problem?
I don't know, because I was home.
Right.
Actually, the between Sierra College along clear to actually Swetzer is there was a proposed bypass to go down there, and I think that's still a viable thing. It is pretty complicated, but clear along that side would definitely help to keep traffic out of from Swetzer Business Park to along to get to Sierra College, because right now all the trucks come through town.
Right. All the way to Sierra College and keep going.
So I guess I asked about the pandemic because, you know, I guess folks are anticipating that, yes, some people will go back to work, but others will continue to do remote work. So there may be less traffic, you know, after this period. We'll have to see.
We're still in the pandemic anyway.
Yeah, we are.
I would say that during the pandemic, the freeways have functioned as they were originally designed to function.
Yeah.
You know, the traffic was heavy, but it did not stop.
Right. Well, as more development, you know, as more people move up to these parts of the state, you know, traffic will get worse. But you know, you do have, is the railroad a possibility in the future for, say, commuters to Sacramento or Roseville? Is that even something people would consider? What do you think?
No, it'll never happen.
No?
They've already told us that they won't allow another stop because it's too close to the others.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still say we shouldn't give up, but part of a compromise position there would be you eliminate one of the stops in Rockland and take that stop here in Loomis, so the train's not stopping any more times.
Right.
It's just stopping up in Loomis. But I agree, railroad's not easy to work with. It'll be hard to do.
Okay.
It is. But another proposal was to just get the trains to go on above Sierra College, to go all the the heavy traffic train and leave those tracks just for commute trains and a light rail going to Sacramento and to the airport, and get all the freight by Sierra College. They have a line there. Something can be negotiated, I think, because by now also, I think on those trains they carry oil and gas. They can explode and it can be devastating for the entire town. So I think we have to have the will to get lawyers and move the heavy trains again by Sierra College and use those lines only for light trains and commute trains like Amtrak with passengers. And if it's possible, and the money's there now, I know the money's there now, take advantage of that money and just elevate all the tracks with a overpass, all from Sierra College to King. So we have one overpass and will be no stop for anything, just regular traffic for cars and bicycles. And will be an overpass a mile more or less long, and will connect again to Sacramento and to the airport. And that will lighten all the traffic and use where the tracks are now, clean it up, use for parks and recreations and places where people can go and enjoy at night, daytime, and close to restaurants, and even take over Ripley Road and develop all that just for tourism.
Okay, ambitious.
It is, but this is the time. We don't do it now. We are pressed to do something. This is the time to do, and the money's there. It's just to make sure that we can get the money.
One of the things to note is that eastbound track, doesn't come through Loomis. The westbound track comes through Loomis. So there's an eastbound track that goes around Loomis, and because of the weight that they carry and the elevation of the track bed. So if you start down in Rockland, you'll find that's where the eastbound track starts, and it goes completely around Loomis. So you find relatively no eastbound trains going through Loomis. They're all westbound.
Well, what those are those long 15 minutes going through, 20 minutes at night, day and night.
Those are all westbound.
But can we move those out?
No. I did have a discussion with the Union Pacific president at one time when I was on the council. You know, they don't have to follow all the rules that everybody else does because it's all federal
regulations.
Yeah. And so they don't have to follow the rules, and working with them is the best way to get things. But I've had some experience with that, and it even takes about 2 years to get a lease from them. Right. So trying to get them to do overpasses and things like that. They did come through and they redid all the crossovers so that we have better crossovers.
Well, it took 2 years, but it must be done. Let's take another 2 years and do better, if possible. Well, it takes time. There's no doubt.
Yeah. I see Jean had her hand up. I want to make sure.
Yeah,
Jean,
go ahead, Jean.
Jean, are you there? Oh, you lose Jean. Nope.
No, she's there and she's unmuted. I think you can just talk, Jean.
Nope, we're not hearing you. If we can't hear you, try typing it into the chat. You can just click on chat and type your comment there. Okay. Any other comments? Any other ideas, suggestions, things we should make note
most
of?
of these ideas have been kicked around before.
Yeah.
And of course, we haven't yet mentioned it, but there's the Doc Barnes Drive extension, which could go down and encompass some improvements there at Boyington, Russ. Maybe, you know, if you extend Doc Barnes, then fix that S curve in Boyington and all. Put a signal in at that school parking lot. I don't know.
So that's this area?
Yeah, that's where it would end. The extension would go behind Rayleigh's there, parallel to the freeway in that open area, and hook in somewhere close to Boyington and King Road, where King Road crosses the freeway.
So somewhere along here. So
yeah,
basically,
that's correct. It's called Doc Barnes Extension.
Doc Barnes Extension. Okay. Okay. I think that, that was mentioned last time we talked about these issues.
It's probably the most realistic solution, especially with pending development. That parcel's getting, that area is getting a lot of attention.
Okay. Where is this, the new development going in again?
That whole blank field there, you see where Rayleigh's is, the white roof at the bottom right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole area behind them, we've had a number of proposals for development of it. You know, several hundred homes or more, and some commercial and stuff too.
Okay.
One of the things that we have talked about was the going from Interstate 80 and Horseshoe Bar up to King Road on a bypass road. Because when the traffic comes, a lot of the traffic in the evening gets off at Horseshoe Bar and they go right back through town to King and they go out King. There is another access to get over to King, but you have to go to Penryn and come back. So that up past the park. We also would be good if we had an alternate, I think he mentioned before, an alternate access from the south, from somewhere in Horseshoe Bar, where if you go down a little bit from where you are to Oak Tree Lane and Horseshoe Bar, if we could get a roadway to connect Horseshoe Bar into the park, it would be a good plan.
So would that be extending Oak Tree or somewhere up here?
You know, the folks that live on Oak Tree would probably lynch us, but it's not made for a large amount of traffic.
Okay.
But either going that way somehow or to be able to go from Horseshoe Bar and Interstate 80 to King Road. We are not going to get an overpass, most likely at King Road that accesses onto the freeway. It's probably not going to happen for a lot of reasons, and we beat that to death. So,
but you're saying something that would connect more along closer to 80, somewhere close to 80. Okay.
A frontage road,
Frontage road up to the park. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see that option go in with an auxiliary lane on the freeway. And I would say Russ Kelly is correct, but he didn't finish his sentence. It will not go in our lifetime, Russ.
Probably.
But if we don't put it in the plan, it won't go in our children's lifetime either.
I think it's important to keep it in there, at least from a perspective that, you know, we might get stuck on the staff level, but maybe if we go through the legislative side and talk to our congressmen and state reps, it might kind of help move it forward. So I think it needs to stay in there for sure.
Okay.
I agree with Sean that if you have to keep it in there to make it potentially happen someday. And it's really the only true long-term solution to Taylor Road, because we're picking up that bypass traffic. When the freeway backs up, people would rather take their time on Taylor Road, and that's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
so I agree with Sean. If we could keep it earmarked
Mhm.
then someday, Russ, someday.
Okay. So we're reaching, I think, the end of our time here. Any final comments, ideas we want to get down? It sounds like you've had a lot of these discussions already, so this is just another way to sort of highlight them. And we hope it's been a useful exercise. Although maybe it's beating the old dead horse or something. I don't know.
Maybe one other quick thing to consider would be, so Rockland's building out all kinds of bikeways that kind of go along their ravines.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of right where your mouse is right there, kind of to the southwest of there. I mean, if there was some way we could connect to Rockland's bikeway system, that would basically create, I mean, you could ride your bikes for miles. I mean, all the way down to, almost Folsom Lake.
Right. Yeah,
It's
good
all,
idea.
and a lot of it's it's nowhere near roads. It's all kind of through reserve areas.
Right. Yeah, definitely look at your neighbors and then the county and see what their bike plans are. I mean, that's definitely something we're seeing more of in the state, different, cities sort of figuring out how to connect one to the other and extend those facilities. That's a great idea. Okay.
The county actually has a good trail plan, and there's only a few places. I mean, we haven't talked about riding horses in town yet, but we do that. There's only a few places that you can get under the freeway. One of them is in Roseville, one of them is in Penryn, and the other one is just below Newcastle. So there is ways to get our horse trails under the freeway, but those are the only three options that I know between Roseville and Colfax. So
we forgot to include a little symbol for horses. We should have had one also, now that I think of it.
If I could mention Keep Placer Moving, they're doing an upcoming community meeting regarding Loomis specifically. And it's to discuss how we can build a better transportation network in Placer County. It's scheduled for Thursday, May 6th from 4:30 to 6:30. And you can just go right to keepplacermoving.org or whatever it is and register to participate in that. And then SACOG is also doing I'm trying to find it. There it is.
That's tomorrow, Mary Beth. Keep Placer Moving.
Yeah, the Keep Placer Moving is tomorrow at 4:30. And SACOG Trails Network is doing something regarding working with cities and counties and community stakeholders to develop a visionary plan that could link every community and major parks with a network of trails and increase access to job sites, community amenities. I can put the link in the chat, and there's a survey that you can take that they have. That survey expired on April 30th, but you can at least see. I'll post the materials that they have provided in the chat, just so everybody can kind of get familiar with that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to stop share unless there's any additional comments to mark on the map. It's interesting. I don't think I ever heard much around how this elementary school, Clark Powers Elementary, does that access work okay on Humphrey? Are there any issues there that we should be worth pointing out?
There's a page.
I live very close to that. It's really only bad at the time of school, starting and stopping. But I do think it's a problem.
Okay.
At those times, though, it's not all day. Humphrey's pretty quiet most of the time.
Okay. Are there many kids that walk or bike, or is it mostly driven in buses?
Well, that's one of my pet peeves, because my parents didn't get me up for school or get me to school. You had to get there on time, on your own. It was a valuable lesson in life.
Yep.
But unfortunately, the cars line up way down Humphrey Road, a half mile or more.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where some cities have really found safe routes to school programs to be effective, because it's a program that does a lot of work on education and also encouragement and motivation, you know, on the benefits and, you know, getting the kids excited. Usually the kids are excited about the chance of, you know, to walk or bike to school. It's the parents that don't feel comfortable doing that, but there are ways through walking school buses and sort of chaperoned efforts that more kids can be encouraged to walk and bike to school, and more parents will accept that. So just something to consider for the city, you know, the town to consider in the future. You know, is it worth working with the schools or you know, looking at a safe routes to school program where basically the schools do some work, but the city also supports it with infrastructure changes as well. So something to consider. Okay. Hearing, I think it's hearing no other comments, I'm going to stop share. And I think, Mary Beth, I guess I'll let Mike take it over. I think it's been helpful just hopefully for you to hear some of this, and some of it may be old hat if you've been dealing with transportation issues for a while, but hopefully it's been of value, and best of luck with the update of the general plan circulation element.
Thank you, Paul.
Go ahead.
So at this time, I guess we should move on to committee questions of staff, but we kind of had a give and take here asking questions, but it's on our agenda, so we're open up this time for any additional questions the committee may have of staff. I'm going to say having none, because we all did get an opportunity to speak. We should now give the public a chance to comment.
Anybody out there, just open your mic and speak. Don't be shy.
This is Matt Fox. I've got one question, maybe Sean can help answer. I'm just wondering where the town stands as far as funding for Dock Barnes. Is that something we've got anywhere close to enough money to build, or is that something that if we don't get the developer, if we don't have like a development agreement that requires it to be built, if it looks like the current plan is just plans on dedicating the land for it.
Right. Yeah.
How close are we?
We don't have money to build that road.
Okay.
So we need to look at the traffic impact study that's going to be done for the new project and see, you know, what that traffic study shows. Once we get that back, if the traffic study shows that they can't use just Library Drive and have all the traffic using that road, then we'll have to have a discussion about what they're doing on the road stuff. But the application, you know, what we had submitted from Hidden Grove is just a pre-application that's likely to be changed between now and when the actual application is sent in. And then after the application is sent in, the mitigation measures, conditions of approval are going to dictate what they actually build. So we have to kind of wait and see how that happens. So the short answer to your question on if the town has the money to build that road, the answer is certainly no.
Thanks. Is there any chance that they will connect through, I mean, without using Dock Barnes through residential streets? I know they had one of the streets connected, but it was emergency vehicle access only.
I don't know yet. I mean, right now they have it shown as an EVA, and I think that an EVA is about as much as we would want to have connected there. But, you know, until we get the traffic study back, I really don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Seeking more public comment. Okay, moving on. Our next item would be committee deliberation and direction. I don't know that we have any direction to you at this point. We have nothing from staff, certainly.
Staff would like to thank LGC and SACOG for presenting this workshop to this committee. When we did it the first time, Paul offered up a second opportunity for this, and we took him up on it. So thank you, Paul, Kayla, Deanna, Greg Chu, all you guys. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
I agree. Thank you very much. It was informative and educational and gave us lots of food for thought.
And I also agree.
Thank you, Paul.
Great. Yep, my pleasure. Thanks.
We will be seeing Paul and company again next week. That everybody will be invited to. We haven't quite finalized the agenda and distributed it yet, but next Wednesday, the 12th at 6 o'clock, Paul and company will be here with a game, an interactive game called the density game. So it's all about housing and how many units and things like that. So we're really encouraging participation in that because it's very eye-opening.
And after that, you'll be sick of me. You won't want to hear from me again in Loomis.
No.
I doubt that. Okay, so then no deliberation or direction. Any recommendations that we should issue, or should we hold that for when we're completing our element work here?
I have one
What
question.
my recommendation at this point is we do have Mario Tambolini from Wood Rogers, who is your technical staff on the circulation element. There he is now. We would like to bring him in and let him give this committee an update on where he's at. And then I have one other thing I'd like to share with you all after that. But Mario, take it away.
Sure. So yeah, just a quick update on where we are in the circulation element update process. As we mentioned at the last meeting, we're still going through the process of updating the settings. So we're compiling new traffic data from year 2019. It's a lot more recent than what we had before. We're going through and updating the technical analyses, the LOS analysis, and so forth with that new year 2019 data. And then we're also starting to look through the goals and policies in the element to identify some things we can do to improve the consistency and the kind of readability with the other sections, as well as to maybe make some additions to address new legislation that has passed since it was last updated. So for the next meeting in June, we're going to be taking a closer look specifically at the goals and policies, making some recommendations on some types of language that we may want to add, and then asking all of you to potentially consider, some input that you may have on goals and policies for circulation. So that's what we'll be doing at the next meeting, first Wednesday in June.
Thank you, Mario. Any questions of Mario? Go ahead, Hector.
I don't really know if it's for him or maybe Shane. I'm saying all the time the money is there, that we have to go on and get it when it's available. But what I mean is in Sacramento, there is a budget from the federal government for all these kind of road improvements. So maybe we need a couple of people that can navigate the ways in Sacramento and see how we can get that money for the town. I don't know if it's an answer for that, or.
Are you talking about the
Do something
infrastructure
about-
package from the feds, the federal infrastructure package?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll be taking to council recommendations on how to use that money. The town is only getting, well, it's not only, but we're getting 1.3 million, I think, yeah, 1.3 million from that round of stimulus money, well, the infrastructure funding from the Fed. So I got to figure out what we're going to use that, well, what staff's recommendation is for that, and take it to council probably in June.
can we lobby for more money? Because that's not enough.
We do that on a routine basis. We're constantly looking for additional funding, whether it's through, going through SACOG on the local level, state level, and then if there is anything that comes through the federal side, that's grant money especially, then we do apply for that. they've kind of put the clamp down on stuff like earmarks. So, and especially our congressman does not do big supporter of earmarks. And so our ability to get like a specific carve out of funding and some kind of a bill has been basically wiped out. Other congressmen do that, but ours won't.
Oh.
So we look for every sort of funding source that we can get, and then cobble that money together to get built what we can get built. But you know, I make this comment all the time that we have infinite problems and finite solutions, right? I mean, if I had an open checkbook to fix everything in the everything in town, then we would have pristine roads and we wouldn't have all these kind of problems. It's all resource driven and specifically driven by funding and what we can do and what we can't do, and prioritizing needs versus wants and doing all that. So we're sorry, go ahead.
A budget to see how much money we need for what we need to do now, thinking it can be done in maybe 10 years, or start looking for the money now.
Yeah,
we're $20 million, $30 million, whatever it is, and start working on that, negotiating.
So we're putting together our capital improvement plan that includes all the improvements that we want to do in town, not only for roads, but also stuff like storm drain systems, facilities, all that. So all those road improvements go into the CIP. Right now, previously our CIP didn't include everything. It just had stuff that we thought we'd be able to fund. That's not a good way to do it, because then if there is money that shows up, but we don't have a project for it in the CIP, we can't apply for that money. So that's being fixed. We're going to have that done probably within the next, 3 or 4 months with our new engineer coming on. And then that gives us one of the tools to go forward and continue to look for additional funding, whether it be through SACOG, which is the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, so the kind of localish, or state through Caltrans or through federal funding. We're going to have that document done first. That's kind of like our long-term. It's like a 20-year plan, basically, on all these needs that we have go into this big hopper, and then we look for funding for those projects.
Are you looking money for collecting water from gray water from the houses that can go back to irrigation, and all collected to go back to down the earth so we can use it in the future? Or is that include that money? Because this is the time to do it. You have to start fighting. We have to start fighting now to get all that, because this drought is going bigger and bigger and larger, and we have no water pretty soon. So we have to find a way how to collect all that and reuse it in the same town. Here, or with other towns, work together.
Right. I don't know if PCWA, so Placer County Water Agency, I don't know if they're looking at that kind of stuff or not. The town doesn't have the resources to run a program like that. I mean, we could do something potentially like a grant to help individual homeowners do something like a rain recycling barrel or something like that. I did it
before. They told me not to do it. Now they're begging me to do it over there. It would be in Berkeley. I did it 40 years ago. They told me not to. They stopped me. So, because I think we have to put everything in, like you said, in one big project. Rockland is collecting water already. They're collecting water in huge amount of systems, huge amount of water in the system, millions of gallons, to use it when there's no water. So they can tap into that. It's mainly for the rich people, but it's okay. We can do it for everybody here. And I think if the money is available, we have to fight for it and just try to get as much as we can. And I think we have to go at least $20-30 million we have to have. But this is top of my mind. The engineers and you put it all together and could be even more. But if you don't do it now, that's it. Right. I think.
Yep. And
more people are moving to this area. We are moving. I move here.
Yeah.
So I know. Okay, I'm sorry, taking too much time.
No, not at all. So under committee assignment, goals and policies, is it appropriate for this committee to have a goal or maybe even recommend a policy of creating a transportation fund more than what we already have? Sean, can you answer to that? Or
Creating a transportation fund in terms of like additional like building fees, or what do you mean?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Where else are you going to turn? You're not going to. We know well that you're not going to get a tax increase or anything for it.
Right. So we just recently updated our fee schedule. You can't just decide that you're going to charge $500,000 per year, whatever, like, I mean, whatever you have to, there has to be a nexus study that ties back to what the fee is. Ours were updated in May, I believe it was, and they did go up a little bit, not a whole lot. I think that one of the problems that we have with the way that, so like we have maintenance districts in town, right? We have, I don't know, 10 or something maintenance districts in town. The maintenance districts are set up. It's a parcel tax that's paid by the individual properties that goes into a fund. And then at every so many years, we're able to use that money. There'll be enough money pulled together to do stuff like pave this neighborhood or pave or do whatever. The problem that we have before I got here, and we haven't really done any since I've been here, but they're not set up in like a standardized way. And so some of them will pay for some stuff, others don't pay for that same stuff. Others pay for a bunch of stuff, and then some pay for just a tiny little bit. So it's kind of hit or miss the way that those were set up, and none of them, frankly, have enough money going into them to get anything done with, unless you wait like 15 years for the money to build up. New developments, we can fix that and have the CFD or the Melrose or whatever be charged enough money so the property owner that lives in that neighborhood that's going to be built pays for the impact that they have on that neighborhood's roads. You can't have them pay for existing conditions outside of their development, though, other than through the nexus study that I was talking about, the local traffic mitigation fee. And we do have that. I think that we need to take another look at those, make sure that they're at the right level. And if they need to be bumped up, then we need to bump them up.
Okay.
The CFD thing, so it's like a two-step process. There's, on the one hand, we need to deal with this maintenance district and CFD stuff on future projects, because you can't go back. I can't go to somebody who lives in Sunrise Loomis and say, hey, we're gonna increase. Well, I guess we could, but they have to vote on it, and nobody's going to do that. So we need to fix them for the new properties coming in, and then on the other side, for new development building permits, we need to increase that probably. That's all for new development, though. It's not for existing. The only way to fund existing is through sales tax money, gas tax money, or doing a separate sales tax like what PCTPA has been talking about that's specific for traffic improvements. And as you know, most of you know, I don't know if all of you know, there was a point last year where PCTPA was looking to put a sales tax measure on the ballot, get that approved. Loomis started out being in that district, and then we were cut out because the polling showed that our numbers were too low and that measure could potentially fail if the town was still in it. So that was about $30 million potential over 30 years. I think that's what it was. About $30 million over 30 years, I think. And we got cut out of that. So trying to find, that's kind of what I was talking about with Hector, like trying to find these different pots of money, figuring out ways to cobble together funding to get projects done. The only way to pay for stuff right now is through new development, by having to build the road itself, or doing traffic mitigation fees, or doing the CFDs, or using sales tax money and gas tax money, which we don't have a ton of in the first place.
Thank you, Sean.
Sorry for the long-winded answer. I think a short answer to your question about should we be looking at goals and policies to help kind of plug that, we should be doing that. That's what this committee is. One of the things that you should be looking at is, is there a goal or a policy that says the town should be looking at alternative sources of funding for fixing our roads? We should be doing that 100%. And that would be a policy or a goal that would be, worth the committee considering, I think.
Okay, so that's something we'll work on. Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
And I would also say, if Costco is ultimately approved, which I assume it will be, when that sales tax starts to come in while it's still fresh and is new revenue for us, maybe we could earmark a portion of it to be set aside. and in 10 years, build up enough money to put in a substantial project.
Yeah, I mean, we have significant shortfall on the amount of money that we need to spend on our roads just for regular maintenance. We have a huge deferred maintenance problem. And it all ties back to what I was saying, that we have, infinite problems and finite resources. That Costco money has probably been spent 30 or 40 times over by now with people, specific things that everybody wants to use it for. And so, we need to look at, when we get that money coming in, how that's going to be used, and that'll go through the budgeting process. I know, though, that council is very concerned, as I am, about the deferred maintenance of our roads, especially. I think for a while we kind of focused on building the pretty shiny thing, and that's great. And it, it helps. The stuff that we did downtown helps bring people to downtown, and having nice sidewalks so people can walk. And then you go to Ace Hardware and do all that. That's all important. But at some point, you can have a really nice road downtown, and then the roads on the outskirts are crumbling. People still aren't going to come here. So we need to look at both and prioritize both.
Thank you.
And I can say something else.
Yes, go ahead.
Very quick. One of the solutions to take some of the pressure for circulation and housing, probably, I know it's difficult, but probably is to incorporate some more areas into town, so we can take those housings and roads outside the existing limits and incorporate some areas into town. And
annexation
areas incorporated now into town. And the builders have to build the road and all the, the pipes, all the system. And then
Correct.
we can have some relief inside, because Loomis is pretty small while it's town now. So if we put more housing, more roads, trying to expand, there's nowhere basically. So we can get another, I don't know, 500 acres, 1,000 acres somewhere, incorporate it, and let the builders do all that part.
The only issue with incorporating new areas and annexing is that if we annex, let's say that we just annex one parcel, right?
Yeah.
That parcel that we annex, we don't get 100% of the property tax for that. We only get a small portion of it, because the county where that parcel is going to want to be made mostly whole for that loss, because they can't transfer 100% of that property tax to the town. So we get a small increment of that, not a whole lot. So it would have to, in order for us to annex, it has to be approved by the council. It has to go to the county has to approve it, and then it goes to a board called LAFCO. It's a local agency formation commission, who decides these kind of boundary issues. They won't let us incorporate anywhere in the county, anywhere outside of our borders, unless we can show that we have capacity to serve those parcels through whether it's sewer capacity, water capacity, storm drain, roads, all that stuff. So at this point, we're having a difficult time maintaining what we have. If we were to annex, an area outside on the outskirts of town, and that was slated for development, there was a new development that was going to be built there, that's a different thing. But on the same token, the county is going to be more likely to want to have that be built than to have that be built and then come into the town, because we still don't have the ability to provide services for that stuff, even if it's a new thing that gets built.
That's why I'm saying the developer can provide all that. They do it in close communities. They have their own sewer line. They use it. They pay for it. Nobody else can tap into that. Looks unfair.
Right, but they'll pay for their stuff, but they won't be able to pay. They can't pay for anything else outside of their area.
Exactly, but the developer can build all that infrastructure, and you get a lot of housing there. They can make money, enough money, and bring all the sewer lines and all the power lines underground to those communities, and we get at least something rather than nothing. It's a little bit, but we don't invest anything. The developer invests everything. Think about.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't think that I don't believe that it works the way that you think it would end up working. It's
Probably true. I just try see if we can find the loop there. If we can find something where we can hook up and boom, ring it.
John, I think you've done a great job of trying to get the funds to fix the roads and do the things that we need to do. And having been on the council and having been here when we first incorporated, I do know that LAVCO will probably never approve anything to be added to our boundaries. And that's kind of a pie in the sky thing. But I do appreciate everything you've done and are doing, and the things you understand what we can do and what we can't do. And I appreciate the staff for working to do the best they can to get those funds to be able to take care of our community. I do appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Russ. I unfortunately have to bail out, so have a good rest of the day, folks. I'll see y'all later.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
I think we lost our Vice Chairman Hogan once again. But I want to take you on a little tour, if I may. Are you seeing my screen? Oh, I have to, there we go. Are you seeing my screen that says Loomis website?
Yep.
Town of Loomis?
Yep.
So a couple of weeks ago, we've been talking about it for a while, but we finally launched our social pinpoint program. It's an interactive mapping tool. And from anywhere in our website, it's right up here, social pinpoint. Just click on that. It kind of mirrors a lot of what LGC just provided as far as being able to pick up markers and place them on a map and tell us what your good things, your bad things, your ideas, anything. So once you get to this point, it gives you the little introduction, and then you would go down and click here to begin the journey. That takes you into the social pinpoint interactive tool. You see our mission statement, which through the general plan update, we keep asking, is there anything we need to change about our mission statement? So it's an important statement, and it really says a lot about our community. As you go down, you get the ideas wall, which is just like Post-it notes. I'm sorry, there it goes. So this is a place where you can share your experiences and stories that capture the essence of Loomis. It gives you little markers. You want to share an experience, what's working well, what businesses I want, and things to improve. And as you can see, we've already got quite a few people posting things. Our goal through the general plan update, as you know, we're taking comments. Every comment is being addressed in a spreadsheet type format so that everybody knows what everybody's saying, and we can use that under each different committee where it's applicable. So these comments, although we haven't started to review them, it gives the opportunity for a newcomer coming in to start a discussion and have an exchange with whoever posted that comment in the first place. So a real engaging tool to stimulate conversations. So that's the ideas wall. Our general plan elements are broken down here. So land use and housing, it actually, when you navigate to the map, it'll open up a map where you can, once again, put in your comments. If it's land use specific, housing opportunity sites, or just make a general comment, you would just pick this up, put it on the map, and say, hey, I got a general comment here, whatever that is. So it floats down through all the different elements: economic development and finance, circulation and roads. So this is a good one for this committee because you can actually navigate to the map. And if you've already made a comment, I wouldn't suggest putting it here, but you can duplicate your comments. We will pick that up too, but just in an essence of staff time. So out here at King Road, we have somebody that's saying they purchased 2 acres at King Road in Delmar. The road Delmar from King to Pacific was in horrible condition at that time and has not been worked on to any extent since that time. So those kind of things are really important as we're going through and creating our capital improvement program. And, you know, it helps us kind of hear what people are saying. We probably have a lot more of these same kind of comments on various roads. So, you know, feel free, use this. It gives you the bike and pedestrian comments where those pinch points are on Horseshoe Bar, traffic circulation, parking. One thing we got out of parking, I think it was from the land use committee, was adding additional public parking signs downtown so that people just don't drive down and all of the Taylor Road spaces are taken, but actually do some directional signage to get them off of Taylor and back behind the shops to encourage them to get out and walk. So any kind of those comments, feel free, put them down. As you see, you can expand it to really hone in on a specific area and make your comment appropriately. So that's all I had. Unless anybody has questions, I can stay on this or.
Very cool, Mary Beth.
That is good, huh?
Really good.
That's great to see it.
Thank you. And we have to give credit to staff Sarah Day Jennings. She got tasked with setting all of this up and putting it together. And, you know, it's going to need some tweaks and stuff once we actually start diving down. But right now, we'll take all comments received up through May 1st and address those and float them down. And then I think on a weekly basis, we'll clear them out and make sure they're addressed. That's my presentation to the committee. And I think we lost Mike Hogan. He kept dropping off. So in his absence, unless there's any other comments or concerns from the committee, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you
Thanks.
next week.